Well, joining us now to talk about all of this is Chris DeVito. He's the Director of Outreach for Iran 180. And Chris, we're glad to have you back on the show.
Great to be with you, Rita, on this Valentine's Day, which is, by the way, banned in Iran.
Ah, okay. Well, I'm glad I'm celebrating it here in America then.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me know.
Probably low on the list of bad things that the regime does, but I guess it's on there.
Well, you know what? When you ban Valentine's Day, that's where we draw the line, Chris. That's it.
Where's the love?
You know what? There are so many things going on out there, and when you look at some of these things, first of all, there's a report that's expected to come out in a matter of hours. Give us a sense of what we think is going to be unveiled by Iran in this report that they're sort of leading up to.
So, over the past weekend, Ahmadinejad has been making noises about a release of some groundbreaking developments regarding Iran's nuclear program. I think that we would be foolish to take anything he says too seriously. I'd imagine that it will be some sort of minor technical advancement from the perspective of the Iranians, but unlikely to be anything of great significance to the actual nature and substance of their program.
And they're going to say basically for energy again, here's this wonderful thing we've done, right?
Sure. I think it's a predictable script. Maybe we've, manufactured some sort of fuel rod or something along these lines. The claim will be that it is for civilian purposes. But I think, as we all know, I think reliable intelligence indicates that that's certainly not the whole story, to say the least.
So what do we do now that we hear these comments, and of course huge concern over these recent attacks? Are you surprised? And Israel saying squarely, look, this is Iran's work. What do you think?
Well, I think, there's good reason to suspect that Iran is the entity behind these recent events, as you pointed out, in Bangkok, in Tbilisi, and in India. They're one of the few countries in the world that has the capability to mobilize an international terrorist series of events of this nature. They've done it in the past, and they are hoping to retaliate for what they perceive to be slights against them, but by either the United States or by Israel. I think it's, as Shimon Peres said in the clip that you played, Iran is in many ways the center of international terrorism at this point.
Now, why is the White House still being so tepid? And it's it still seems very, even when they deal with Iran and Syria, they just still seem to be walking on eggshells. Here's a little bit of what Jay Carney, the White House press secretary, said at a news conference. Take a listen, Chris.
I simply can tell you that we have not made a judgment yet because details are still emerging regarding what happened in both New Delhi and Tbilisi. And we have no information yet to share with you about who was behind those attacks.
So is the White House just because Iran is not Iraq? It's a lot more complex than, obviously everything else that they've dealt with recently, Libya, Egypt, everywhere else?
Well, I think, one of the important ways to understand the administration's response is to look at, how they're, not what they're saying, but what they're doing. This past week we had a U.S. Air Force, an aircraft carrier re-enter the Straits of Hormuz, despite, Iranian threats that doing so would lead to an attack on any U.S. forces or, an attempt to close the strait. I think that to a certain degree the administration is trying to show its strength through action rather than through words, though I do imagine that at some point, a more public admission of understanding of who's behind this event will be forthcoming.
Yeah, I think so too. And in the meantime, obviously, so much focus on Syria, which has a good relationship with Iran. Let me play a little bit also, Chris. This is Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton and also the British Foreign Secretary William Hague, both of them talking about Syria.
We stand with the Syrian people, and we are looking for a peaceful resolution.
That is for Syrians to be allowed to resolve their own differences peacefully. What currently stands between them and this legitimate aspiration is the Assad regime's naked determination to cling to power at any cost.
And when you hear this, there's obviously a focus on Syria, but yet, as we know, China and Russia shot down the UN resolution. How complex is the Syria-Iran relationship, and is that why we're also, again, walking on eggshells with them?
Well, I think this is a complicated situation. You see that, both Russia and China are offering the diplomatic and political support in the international arena to the Syrian regime. But more importantly, the Iranians are actually offering technical and military support to the crackdown that the Assad regime is currently engaged in. We led a protest last week, my organization, Iran 180, outside of the Iranian mission to the United Nations to protest Iran's role in this ongoing human rights disaster. Almost 6,000, probably more than 6,000 people at this point have been killed in the past year, in large part due to Iranian assistance to the Assad regime. And this comes in the form of intelligence, and also military advisors have, in some corners, been reported to be in the room with Assad and his brother, who is a general, helping lead this effort at cracking down on people who are protesting for a better future for them, for their country, and a more responsive and responsible government. So it really is quite terrible, and Iran is one of the main reasons that this human rights disaster is occurring.
Yeah, and as you point out, with Assad and his key folks right there at the helm, he's very well aware of what's happening. He's very well of the world, being infuriated and frustrated with this. It's just going to be fascinating to see what the next steps are, and also, of course, with Iran, too.
It certainly is.
Thank you so much. We'd love to have you back on again soon, Chris. Always
Absolutely.
wonderful to have you on.
Great to be there.
Thanks so much, and everybody, we'll be right back.